If a single member district were created, it would allow the district to set up districts such as Ojo Amarillo, Fruitland area, Kirtland, Waterflow. These areas would allow minority groups as well as Anglo-Caucasian to be able to select their candidate and to be able to run politically to be able to be elected. The U.S. Supreme Court in Thornburg v. Jingles clearly stated you cannot look at this at one election or two elections. This is a wide area of time that has to be shown to meet these three elements. Now, what we do know is since 1980, which is 32 years, the Kirtland area has had 2 representatives on the school board for Central Consolidated. Of those 30 years, they've always had a minority, a Native American, on that school board, till just recently when Miss Benally passed away and an Anglo was appointed by the school board to fill out her term. So even in the 32 years as of now, in one school district, there has never been a voting block. There has never been a majority or a minority group to be able to go to the polls and completely shut off a ethnic or racial culture's candidate from being elected to the school board. The petitioner does not believe that any group, whether it be Hispanic or if Central Consolidated or any other group, ethnic group, filed a claim that would work its way up the Supreme Court, would be able to meet these 3 elements. The statistics don't back it up. The history for 32 years does not back it up. And again, as we've argued, the threat of litigation should not come into consideration as to whether to allow a school district to be created. The sole issue today, as the Secretary has stated, is whether the education of the children is in the best interest of allowing a school district to be created. Thank you.
And I'll point out in addition to that, the data related to the membership within the proposed Kirtland School District on data provided by the district on April 27th shows that the population of the Kirtland School District will be 78.6% Native American, 16.6% Caucasian, and 4% Hispanic, 1% of the Ojo students have attended Kirtland School for decades, so why someone would now say that their acceptance would not be part of what the community has. They're in the middle school and high school forever. Also, point out with that, let's see, I think it's here, but on the population of the district as a whole, no matter how you cut it, it's over 50%. The data and the support from the U.S. Census data is in your packet. Local implications. When you have issues with board members and you cover 3,000 square miles, very difficult to deal with. When a board wants to shut out one board member, they can totally close out the whole community simply by not informing them of special board meetings, not informing them of, or even asking them if they're available for board meetings. Simple things like boards attempting to close programs that the communities have had for years with no community input or request. Parental involvement. Cotton in 1976 found small school districts have higher levels of parental involvement. Wahlberg, he found that parents participate more fully in school activities and influence decision-making in small schools and school districts. As districts consolidate and move, parents seem to lose their connection with the district that they're working with. They just become another number. It appears through the documentation. In the Pet Vision Statement, it says, we call on every educator, student, parent, community member, and public servant to share in the responsibility for the success of our children, and ultimately the future of the great state of New Mexico. When we put our kids first, New Mexico will win. Well, how we do that and getting more public support, more community support, more parent support is through school boards. Going from 5 to 10 in this small area, you just doubled what you've got for support. Now, what is the big factor that everyone argues against? It just does not make sense to create more school districts. Well, everyone says economies of scale. The district pushed economies of scale. Since the 1950s, they've been pushing economies of scale. Well, we'll be providing you a lot of documentation, a lot of research that shows we've begun to start looking at that and say, does it really work? Well, all that that research shows that doubling enrollment of 2 300-member districts does save you 22.8%. Doubling enrollment of 2 1,500-member districts saves you 3.2%. And little to no savings come from combining larger districts. In fact, you begin running into diseconomies of scale. Is there an optimal size for school districts? Yes, but the optimal may vary from state to state and must consider optimal for whom. Districts with large minority populations or large percentages of low socioeconomic status perform better in small districts. That is a district like CCSD. The greater the wealth of the students, the larger the district can be. Where an optimum enrollment has been found, 2,900 is the most efficient district in Michigan. 3,380 is the most efficient in New York. 1,500 is optimal in Colorado. 1,942 in Indiana. 4 states, 4 different optimums. But they range from 15 to 3,380. Even in large states where you would expect some of those large consolidated districts would be the ones that would be the optimal size. Possible savings of deconsolidation. In the Michigan study, they found that if they consolidated their small districts, they'd save $31 million a year. Problem was, most of them are so isolated, it's impossible to consolidate. But the same study showed that if they deconsolidated their largest districts, they would lead to savings of $363 million a year. 12 times as great if they broke up the big districts versus putting the little districts together. How size affects achievement. Larger school districts are shown to have greater dropout rates, more acts of violence, less parental involvement, higher truancy rates, fewer school meetings, meeting AYP, lower post-secondary enrollments, and lower ACT and SAT scores. Smaller school districts are shown to have higher graduation rates, fewer acts of violence, greater parental involvement, higher post-secondary enrollment rates, higher ACT and SAT scores, and greater teacher satisfaction. So from a parent's point of view, where, when I look at that list, do I want my child in? In a large district or in a small district? The Penn Vision Statement goes on. Bold, visionary reform that puts students first in every decision will increase student achievement and prepare our kids for success in college and careers. Bold, visionary reform isn't doing what everybody else is doing, throwing more districts together. It's taking a look at the data. We're a bald state. We're a continuous improvement state. We're supposed to look at the data and make decisions on that. Here are the graduation. National studies show that the smaller the district, the higher the graduation rate. Well, we wanted to see if that was true in New Mexico. This data comes straight from the Penn website, the data to create these percentages. We have broken the district into the state into 4 separate categories. Districts of 4,000 plus students are what we're considering large districts. There are 17 of them. Districts of 1,500 to 4,000 students, the highest being Artesia at about 3,500. There are 16 of them. Districts of 500 to 1,500, there are 22 of them, and districts of less than 500, New Mexico has 34. Well, these are the graduation rates for 3 years and the 3-year average. New Mexico falls right in line with all the studies show nationally. The lowest graduation rates are in the school districts of 4,000 students or more, only averaging 66.7% over the last 3 years. When you step up down to the next lower district, it jumps 6 percentage points, which it takes almost an 8% increase in their current status for a large district to gain on an Aztec or a Bloomfield, which has 72.4. Districts of 500 to 1,500 have a 75.6% graduation rate, and districts of 500 students or less have an 82.1% graduation rate. The 4 districts within the county, and I should point out the statewide average is 68.7%. So those 3 classifications all graduate higher than the average because the larger districts pull us down so much. Farmington Municipal Schools, one of the larger districts, actually has the best rate in San Juan County at 69.1%. Central Consolidated has the worst rate in San Juan County at 61.2%. 2 and 3 percentage points less than Aztec and Bloomfield. Penn Mission State, a focus on students means an emphasis on 5 strategic imperatives. Expect a smarter return on New Mexico's investment. Require real accountability for real results. Ensure our students are ready for success. Reward effective educators and leaders. And provide effective options for parents. I'm going to give you, I've got 3 of those underlined because one simple thing changes those 3 things for the positive, and that is simply creating more smaller districts. Data show large districts have lower cost per pupil. True. But school districts exhibit a U-shaped phenomenon. That means your expensive districts in real costs are your small districts and your large districts. As districts go from small and begin getting a little bit bigger, their costs drop until they hit a point that's somewhere between 1,500 and 3,500 students, and then those cost rates begin to increase again, where you have large costs on your larger districts. Cost per pupil is not as important as cost per graduate. If you were in business and you were costing out based on how much you ruined, you would not stay in business very long. So we're going to cost out what it is to get someone a diploma to walk out that door. The smaller districts have cheaper costs to graduate. We've got a 2009-2011 data here on a cost per student and a cost per graduate. On the right-hand side, you see cost per student for the 11,000 operational fund, and you see for all funds. All funds is all expenditures, but we have taken out construction costs and debt service costs, because those are not really operational costs that you could align to it. So we believe that's fair, that it works better for Central, because we have been spending dollars in the operational fund because of impact aid dollars. That makes their cost look better than it would otherwise.